Hi, everyone. It is time for our next Go Girl Leadership Project interview. And this week, I am so excited to be interviewing Joanna Long. She is a mom of a toddler, so coffee is her best friend. She is also an amazing family lawyer here in the Chicagoland area. So welcome, Joanna.
Thank you for having me, Patty.
Great. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, I have a toddler. She's 21 months old. Her name's Ada. I'm an attorney and partner at Campbell Long, where we help with wills, trusts, and estate administration. We like to say that we help families at all stages of life. Also, as far as hobbies, I love horseback riding, and I'm an avid podcast listener. My
Really?
entire commute is just filled with podcasts.
Oh my gosh, I love the podcasts have kind of made a research, like they were popular for a while and they went away, and now everybody, like my kids love podcasts. They listen. Do you have a certain one? Do you have certain kinds that you like to listen to?
My favorites right now are Armchair Expert, Criminal, This American Life, Where Do We Begin? I just love the long form interview that just is so different than anything you can get in any other media right now.
Right. It's so true. And is the Armchair Expert, is that with Dax Shepard?
Yes,
Yes, I love that one.
it's
That
very
is,
long.
I know it is long, but you know what I love about that? And there's another one that is escaping me that I love. I love that he asks questions that are kind of on your mind too. Like as he's talking, these people are like, I wonder, and then he'll ask it. So it's not as formal as some of the other interviews tend to be. I love that.
Yeah,
I will
it's
have to.
kind of silly, also
Yes.
intimate. I really like it.
And I sort of want to be friends with him and his wife. Like I feel like
Me
I would
too.
really get friends with them. So if he's listening, we would like you to come to Chicago and we'll all hang out together. That will be perfect.
Yes, please.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned when we did our blog Q&A is that you were talking about what you would say to your 22-year-old self, which is one of my very favorite questions. And one of the things you would say is that you need to have a mentor. So did you have mentors in your life?
Yes, absolutely. I've had many, many mentors over the years. When I was in school, they were my professors. Since finishing school and being a lawyer, most of my mentors have been former bosses of mine, um, colleagues. Also, there's a lot of mentorship groups that the bar facilitates, which are really great. You
Oh,
can sign
that's
up and be partnered with somebody who's in your same practice area, or even just another woman lawyer who you can, be it's a guided thing. So you have a mentor over the course of a year and you have scheduled meetings, and it's really helpful.
Oh, I love that there's actually like guided, like there's specific meetings and it's for a specific time frame. And that's really very helpful. Did you find it? I mean, you just said the bar association kind of it has a way to hook you up. Do you do you have any advice for people that might be looking for a mentor? Like, how do you? I love that you mentioned your former bosses. That's a great one to go to.
Yeah, I think the key is not to be shy. I think a lot of times we think we don't want to waste their time, or we don't feel like we can bring anything of value to them, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think when you reach out to somebody that you respect who's doing something that you want to do, most people are more than willing to offer their advice and insight, and you might even be able to bring something to them, some kind of new piece of technology, new ideas. I think there's an important exchange of information that can happen. And I think the key is just putting yourself out there.
I think I love that you said that it's not just a one-way learning process when in mentorship, that mentors are learning from mentees. There are so many things, especially I've known, like if I've ever mentored somebody that's younger, some of like you were saying, new technologies or just new ideas that they bring to the table, especially if they haven't been in the industry as long as you have. And sometimes we get whatever industry we're in, we can get a little jaded in our own spot, and it's nice to kind of have a fresh set of eyes. I think that's
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. Mhm.
Well, speaking of mentorship, what is the biggest kind of overall lesson that you have learned? And it could be, a life lesson or a professional lesson, whatever. What's one of the biggest ones you've learned?
Well, I think for me, it would be a life lesson that everyone really is just trying to figure it out and do their best. And these things take time. I think we want to kind of compare where we are to somebody else who's much further along in their career, but they didn't get there overnight. It took them time to learn and to grow. And it's okay. Just trust the process and you're going to get there too.
And those are good, wise words for, I think we live in a society now that's very instant. You can, I mean, gosh, I could order groceries right now and have them delivered to my door in 2 hours, and I'm not saying
Right.
I don't do that, but I think that we're so used to that. I mean, do you feel like maybe some people that, especially younger generations, like, do you feel like they are trying to rush that process and want to get to where like you are right away?
Yeah, I think so. I think we see these like overnight sensations where people's career blows up in the media overnight, but that's not really a depiction of real life. Real life, we are learning, we're growing, and we have to put in the time to get there, especially in a field that takes a lot of knowledge, which I'd say
Hmm.
most careers do. You can't learn everything you need to know overnight. It's going to take many years of becoming an expert in the field.
Right, right. And you're right, especially with the heavy learning and the way that things change so quickly. It's almost like you're always constantly learning. And that is,
Right.
so I mean, your field in law is obviously there's a lot of learning to happen. But one of the unique things I think is that you're a partner in a law firm. So not only are you a lawyer, but you're an entrepreneur. What are
Yeah.
some, like, what's one of the biggest lessons that you've learned about being an entrepreneur?
Well, I think one of the biggest lessons would be that to be an entrepreneur, you have to have a lot of faith in yourself and a lot of grit
Mm,
because every day you're showing up and you're working hard and you're trying new things. You're still figuring it out. You're trying to see what works. So if something doesn't work, it doesn't mean you've failed. It just means you've had a learning experience. This particular idea didn't work, but the next one might. You just keep going.
yeah. And that's a really good thing to remember because there are so many times when there's days when I fail at everything, being an entrepreneur, and you think, oh my God,
Absolutely.
I'm just going to close the door and forget it. I mean, it would be, I'm just going to go back and be a lawyer. Like, I'm just going to go to a law firm and it'll be great. But it's true that you just kind of have to keep going. And I've always found too, just surrounding myself with other women entrepreneurs that are going through the same thing, to be able to say, hey, it's okay. I did that too, and it's going to be fine tomorrow. And this is how you fix it, and this is what you learn from it. And that's perfect. All right.
Exactly.
If your best friend were to describe you in 3 words, what 3 words would he or she use?
Hmm. I think she would say that I'm dependable, kind, and ambitious.
Oh, nice combination. I like the ambition and kind in the same group. Because I think so many times we think, especially as women, that if we're kind, that means we must not be very ambitious.
Right. And I think that they can be paired together.
Very much so. And I think we should spend more time talking about that openly, that you don't have to be abrasive to be successful. I mean, some people are, and that's great too, but you don't have to be.
Yeah, I love that. I think we tend to think that as women, we have to act like men to be successful. We have to be fierce and abrasive, like you said, but I don't think that that's true. I think we can still have the feminine touch and be kind and warm, but also ambitious at the same time.
I so agree. I just read an article yesterday from NPR about a book that's coming out, and I now cannot think of the author at all. But it's about women in food, and she was interviewing like 100 women in the food industry, and the question was, "What is a word that you wish people would stop using to describe women in food?" And one of the words that kind of rose to the top that people were surprised about was badass. And
Huh.
the reason, and the article's super interesting, and I posted it yesterday. The reason was that, just for what you were saying, like badass kind of represents, it means that I had to act like I had to use all of my male traits in order to become this successful, instead of using,
Oh,
it was really an interesting take on kind of that connotation of, I don't have to be just like a man in order to be successful. And I would do
I
you
love that.
I know. I will send you the link to that. I mean, I'm not sending
Please
it to
do.
everybody listening, but I will send it to Joanna when I'm done, because it's really, really interesting. And I actually did post it on the Go Girl website on the leadership page. I wrote a little blog post about it because I just thought it was,
Oh, I'm gonna go check.
yeah, it's an interesting conversation starter to think about what are some of the words that we use and what does it really mean to be a woman leader. And one of the things I also found interesting was, stop putting female in front of it. Like, if I'm a great chef or if I'm a great lawyer, why do you have to say that I'm a female lawyer? Like, what does
Yes.
you would never say, and you are in, I mean, law is still predominantly, it's a very male dominated field. You would never say to a colleague, let's call Joe the male lawyer. Like, you would never ever do that. And so why we continue to just have to label, put even the gender label, is kind of interesting.
Yeah, because the undertone is that the male is the default, right?
Right. Right.
And that
That's such a good
shouldn't be
way
the
to put it.
case.
Right. I love that line, that the male is the default. That's right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I read the article. It's really interesting. And I think you probably will find, just again, because of the field you're in, there's probably a lot of similarities between what the women chefs were saying, in addition to what you might feel or see in your own industry.
Yeah.
So, Nay, this is always a great question at the end, but it's always a hard one. Name a woman, and this can be past or present, that inspires you.
There are so many. um, I would say there's so many women in my everyday life
Mm.
that inspire me because they're showing up every single day for their families and for work. I have so many colleagues who have young children who are, just killing it at work and also raising their families. Um, but historically, I will say that I've been really inspired by women who've persevered and succeeded in a male dominated field. Maybe that's why I'm in law now. uh, there's a particular woman named Grace Humiston. She was a lawyer in New York in the early 1900s, and she started her own law firm that focused on helping the working poor and immigrants. And she became known as the female, or the Mrs. Sherlock Holmes, because she was
Really?
such a great investigator. She's got a fascinating history. I recommend
I'm
reading
totally
the
looking her up
Wikipedia
too.
article on her.
Oh my gosh. I
She's
How amazing.
fascinating.
And did you say she started her law practice like in the 1900s, in the early?
Early, yeah, it was.
Oh my
She
gosh.
became a lawyer in the late 1800s and started her practice uh,
That
very beginning of the 1900s.
What a trailblazer. Like, that must have been that had to have been such a unique experience for her. And to think that and I get why like, I could see why she would resonate specifically with you and what you do. Like, you are very much, looking to solve problems for people during very challenging times. And justice, I know justice is a big issue for you, and looking out for, those that may need a little help and that are not getting everything they need to get in society. I love that. I have never heard of her. I am
Yeah,
researching.
she's not very well known, but her story is so interesting. When she went to law school, they would only allow women to go to the night classes. They only allowed men in the day classes. So she was supposed to take longer to get her degree because she was limited what classes she could take. But she was an excellent student and managed to get through law school in 2 years,
Oh my gosh.
even with those limitations. Yeah, she's
Well,
very fascinating.
did you know about her? When did you discover her? Was that when you were a lawyer, or when you were in law school, or was it even before?
When I was a lawyer. So I didn't learn about her until pretty recently on a podcast.
Circle back to the podcast. Everybody should be
I
listening.
love podcasts. But her story was just so fascinating.
Oh my
I
God.
just loved it.
More
Yeah.
people need to know about her. I'm looking her up, and I'm going to put a link on my website to her because I think that is,
Oh, good.
yeah. I love that it's somebody I've never even heard of, and again, not only just a trailblazer in for women in law, but even back then, just the fact, again, she went through school, got through it in 2 years with all those limitations, and just opening her own business must have been so odd for her community.
Right. And I think she did it because she couldn't get a job. No one wanted to hire a female attorney at
Ah,
that time.
I love it. Did
Yeah.
she practice? And you might have mentioned this. Did she practice a specific kind of law?
I know that she investigated a lot of crimes, so I'm not exactly sure what her private practice was. She ended up becoming a United States District Attorney. I think she was the first female United States District Attorney,
Oh my
and she would
God.
investigate um, a lot of the crime that was being committed against immigrants at that time.
Wow. That is, women like that amaze me, and I always love to kind of elevate their story, because I think, especially, I have a daughter that's 23, and she is so far removed from the women's movement. She's so far removed. In her world, women have always, really been able to do what they want to do. And
Right.
I love to read just a reminder of women like Grace who really paved that path. I mean, think of all of the resistance she must have faced every day. And to think that she just kept going. And like you said, perseverance. You can't get it
Yeah, the perseverance is just incredible to me. I love reading about stories of women who really persevered through some really challenging times where all the odds were stacked against them. I just find it fascinating.
Oh yeah, it is. And it also always makes me think, what am I complaining about? Like, the things that are challenging every day are not nearly as big of a deal as only being able to go to school at night. That
Right.
makes me feel a little bit better. Well, Joanna, thank you so much for spending some time chatting with us. I know you are really busy, and I really appreciate that you do this. And I appreciate everything that you do for the families of Chicago, and everything you do with your partner, Cindy. We'll talk to Cindy later in the month, a couple more weeks. But you guys do a really great job, and I'm so happy to have you a part of this.
Thank you so much, Patty. It was so much fun talking to you today.
Great.